Big 12 Radio. This is Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo. This is the Big 12 Conference. This is a different league, along with James Westling. I am Ari Temkin. Did I break any of the fan rules by Modelo? Of course, Big 12 Radio brought to you by the Full-Time Fan by Modelo. Did I break any of those rules? I can't remember. We did them on Friday. I think I did well.
I think you crushed it. No, I don't think you broke any of those fan rules.
Good.
Which there are some bangers. I can't remember what we went over on Friday, but I think you were professional. You were polished. How many Modelo's deep by mid-third quarter were you? Nobody knows.
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
Well, I was working, so, I couldn't have only been like 5 or 6 at that point. All right, Big 12 Radio, Big 12 Today. Great stuff with the former South Dakota State head football coach, John Stiegelmeier, who coached South Dakota State between 97 and 2022, won a national championship. Coach Jimmy Rogers had nothing but incredible things to say about the new Iowa State football coach, and can't wait to see what this thing looks like, because I think he's the perfect guy that Jamie Pollard was able to get.
Man, totally agree, and they moved really quickly on this, and that's the parallel between Iowa State and Kansas State. Two very similar programs in that they compete from an NIL standpoint, but they also are built on player development, roster retention. They do the little things. They always win the penalties and the turnovers, and they don't beat themselves. And I know these fan bases love to go at it when it comes to Farmageddon, but they're really similar programs. And the parallel between them and even Oklahoma State, which I think is really exciting for this conference. All three schools have hired 3 young up-and-comers in the college football coaching industry. Jimmy Rogers is 38. Colin Klein is 36. Eric Morris, the North Texas coach who will be at Oklahoma State, he just turned 40. So you have 3 guys that were, number one, very sought after, I think, when it comes to the whole big picture. Jimmy Rogers could have taken another job. Colin Klein was a very attractive candidate. Everybody wanted Eric Morris. So I love that. I think these are 3 slam dunk hires in this conference. And now, if they have success, other programs are going to try and poach them, but maybe they're here for the long term, and you can see these guys develop into a Chris Kleiman or a Matt Campbell or even a Mike Gundy the early years of his tenure. I'm really pumped for all 3 hires. I think they're really good.
Yeah, and it just goes to show, we spent a bunch of this season wondering how many coaches were going to be replaced in the Big 12.
We've officially hit the over, by the way.
Right.
Because you and I had 2.5.
We never thought that the over would hit, and certainly not with the coaches that ended up leaving.
Yes.
I mean, Chris Kleiman retiring, and obviously Matt Campbell deciding to finally leave Iowa State and take the Penn State job, and look, good for him. I'm sure certainly there's some hard feelings from Iowa State fans, but at the end of the day, the dude stayed for a long time, built something absolutely incredible, and now hands over the program to Jimmy Rogers, who's 38 years old, who's in a similar spot that Campbell was when he took this job from Toledo a decade ago.
Exactly.
But this program is in a much better state.
Mm-hmm. No bad blood. There shouldn't be any bad blood. And
exactly.
This was Matt Campbell's last chance. I mean, this is his window to take a job like this, and I don't fault him for it.
No.
I'm never going to knock somebody for trying to better themselves and try a new challenge. What else could he accomplish at Iowa State? He's had so much success. The winningest season in school history. I mean, that says all that I need to hear about his tenure. And the fact that Iowa State moved on this so quickly leads me to believe that Matt Campbell was very transparent with Jamie Pollard and the administration, helped them in whatever direction they were going to go to make this as clean as possible, like Kleiman did with Kansas State. And I admire the way that both of those guys handled it. And I love the direction that these Big 12 schools are headed. And, yeah, when we played over-under less than 2 weeks ago, the coaches that we were discussing, it was Dave Aranda at Baylor. We both said, oh, yeah, he won't be back next year. He gets a vote of confidence. And then we played over-under, and we talked about coaches that could be on the hot seat and how many of these coaches would survive 2026. And it was Lance Leipold, it was Chris Kleiman, it was Scott Satterfield, and it was Dave Aranda. Never in a million years did I think one of those four coaches outside of Aranda would be out this season. So that was shocking to see Kleiman retire, and then the Matt Campbell stuff.
Yeah. More on this coming up, including what Jamie Pollard had to say as the athletic director announced, that Matt Campbell was leaving, the emotions behind it, and, of course, how quickly they moved to hire Jimmy Rogers, which, to your point, certainly makes it seem like Pollard had a sense of, Campbell wasn't going to be there forever. And, Pollard, I would imagine, had this guy in his back pocket, knowing for years that this is the guy he wanted to replace him, and at some point the time would come. All right, Big 12 today. Each and every week on a Monday during the football season, we give you our player of the week, freshman of the week, coach of the week, jersey of the week, atmosphere of the week. We decided with just the one game this week, let's do it for the season. And let's go with our offensive and defensive players of the year, our coach of the year, our freshman of the year. Plus, we can give a player of the week and a stat of the week as well from the game. Let's start there. Let's start with our player of the week. Who is your player of the week? Not of course, of the year. We'll get to that in a second. But who is your player of the week this week?
Okay, this is player of the week, and this can be offense or defense.
Yeah.
No, I did yearly awards, but that's okay. It's got to be Ben Roberts, right? Those 2 interceptions for Texas Tech. He would be my player of the game. He would be my defensive player of the game. So much is talked about Jacob Rodriguez and what he's done this year at basically the same position. Well, Ben Roberts said, "Hold my Modelo." He was huge in that game with those 2 picks.
Well, and I want you to give the stat of the week, because this only exists because of how absurd the stat is.
Yeah, BYU had a 90-yard opening drive. They only had 110 yards the rest of the entire game. They finished with 200, most of it on that very first drive before Texas Tech said, okay, let's lock in and let's go to work.
Yeah, BYU was held to a season-low 200 yards. There's your 90 on the first drive and 110 over the rest of the game. That's the lowest they were held to in the season since being held to 255 yards, also against Texas Tech. So just incredible by that Texas Tech defense against this very good BYU offense. All right, who is your freshman of the year? Let's go with that.
Okay, I couldn't tell if this was a serious question. You guys said, hey, have you sent your awards? I said, we aren't actually doing freshman of the year, are we? It's Bear Bachmeier. Everything
Shocking.
he did this season for BYU. Set a Big 12 record with like 8 freshman of the year awards this season. I know he wasn't at his best against Texas Tech, but who would be? They did that to a lot of quarterbacks, but Bear this season on paper, on the field, never in a billion years did I think BYU would be better, which I think they are, than they were last season when they lose Retzloff late in the year. Bear steps in. He was phenomenal.
Yeah, and look, I think it's only fair for some BYU fans to wonder what this thing might have looked like had Retzloff still been their quarterback, especially as he leads Tulane into the playoff. But I think moving forward, you've got to feel really good about where your program is with this guy quarterback. He took some freshman lumps this year, but dude's a linebacker. He's a gamer. He's tough to break down. He had an incredible season. Yeah, he's undoubtedly the freshman of the year, to your point. Nobody really even in the same stratosphere as him in terms of this award. He played so well over the course of this season. There were many times he did not look like a true freshman. The freshman named Bear, who only looked like a freshman against Texas Tech, a dominant defense. Bear Bachmeier, the freshman of the year. All right, who is your defensive player of the year? We're going with the obvious ones first.
Okay.
Here.
Jacob Rodriguez.
Yeah. No, I had to scour the statistical evidence to figure it out. Who should this be?
I mean, I do think you could make a case for David Bailey. He was sensational as well on that defensive front. I didn't think he could have the same level of success that he had at Stanford in his 1 year at Texas Tech this year. And
he did.
He did. But Jacob Rodriguez, those 117 tackles, the 4 picks, leading the country in forced fumbles. There's a reason why he's in the conversation for the Heisman. Even had a couple of rushing touchdowns because Texas Tech, it's like video game stuff. They put their linebacker in at running back because they think he might need a couple of offensive touchdowns to win a Heisman, and he goes out there and he plows over right guard for a touchdown like it's nothing. He had a hell of a year.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because watching the game in the stadium, a few people in the first Ben Roberts interception, they were like, oh, is that Rodriguez? It's like, no, that's 13. It's 10, but it just goes to show you that like every splash play made on defense seemed to be attributed to Jacob Rodriguez because he made every splash play on defense. Taylor McHargue had the stat before the game. Dude averages a turnover a game. Not the team. Rodriguez averages a turnover a game.
Some teams don't do that.
Right. So, yeah. Incredible season for Jacob Rodriguez. You hope it ends with an invite to New York, and we'll find out soon if it does, and certainly should. We'll see, but the dude was a monster, and again, so emblematic of this team. When you think about all of the money spent, all the players they brought in, and whatever else, it was Ben Roberts leading them to the Big 12 championship and Jacob Rodriguez, two linebackers that have been there, that have been through the lumps, that have been on some bad defenses that shined the brightest. So congratulations, of course, to Jacob Rodriguez. There's more hardware coming his way. All right, this is where it gets a little bit more interesting. How about the Offensive Player of the Year in the Big 12?
All right, my Offensive Player of the Year, and this was really tough because this is a year that nobody really stands out. There's only one 1,000-yard receiver in this conference. There's only 3 1,000-yard rushers in this conference. This conference had a lot more balance top to bottom, running backs by committee, and the defenses were really good this year. So my Offensive Player of the Year is a guy that you brought up last time we did this exercise. I'm going with Noah Fafita, the quarterback at Arizona. He is the only quarterback in the conference that is top 4 in yards, touchdowns, completion percentage, and passing efficiency. The only one in the league. Collectively, sure, his 247 yards per game don't jump off the page, but 26 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions, 64% of his passes, and I just love his story. He's had some roller coaster years. He wasn't at his best last year, but under a new offensive coordinator, he was polished, he was efficient, and he was plenty dynamic, and they had a major breakthrough year in Tucson.
Yeah, he was without a doubt the quarterback of the year in the Big 12. I mean, Sawyer Robertson obviously had the statistics, so did Josh Hoover, but sort of seemed empty to a degree relative to what Noah Fafita was able to do in leading his team to a 9-3 record this season. A huge surprise there. I'm going to go, though, as my Offensive Player of the Year as L.J. Martin, because to me, this was the year of the running back in a year we thought going in would be the year of the quarterback. It had to be paid off with the running back. The leading rusher in the Big 12 this year, L.J. Martin, 1,300 yards rushing, 200 yards ahead of number 2 in Raleek Brown. So think about that. He finished well above Raleek Brown in terms of rushing, and then 1,500 all-purpose yards for L.J. Martin, averaging 120 yards per game. Only Raleek Brown averaged more yards per game and 120.5. When you think about all the weapons that Arizona State had, you know, BYU had the weapons, but the success that BYU had this season, to me, goes back to L.J. Martin on offense. He was the engine of this locomotive, and he was the reason BYU had the success they had. Bear Bachmeier did a really good job in running off of him and leading the offense, but it was all about what L.J. Martin was able to do. We thought that he could have a breakthrough season if he would be healthy, and he was healthy enough this year to lead the league in rushing. Congratulations to L.J. Martin, my Offensive Player of the Year. All right, Coach of the Year, James.
Man, this was tough because I think there's a lot of candidates that are worthy of this award. I think we could almost do a starting 5 of Big 12 coaches this year because there were so many, but I'm going with Kalani Sitake. To win 11 games, back-to-back seasons, to do it with a true freshman quarterback, to lose your veteran leader late in the offseason, to have a true freshman who joins the team late in the recruiting cycle from Stanford, they flip him, and to beat everybody on your schedule not named Texas Tech, and to do it with complimentary football, both sides of the ball. I think his assistant coaches are really underrated. I think the way that he kind of navigates the Big 12 turbulence with all the outside noise, tough environments every time they go on the road, to have 4 or 5 wins and come from behind fashion tells me he's making big-time halftime adjustments because they were so much better in the second half. They're just rock solid. And next year, if the Big 12 had a preseason poll, it would go Texas Tech, BYU, Utah for next year. No doubt about it with what everybody has coming back. And Sitake turning down Penn State to return to BYU is huge for the league. He is my Big 12 Coach of the Year.
Yeah, I love that, and glad you recognized Kalani Sitake for the incredible season he had. My Big 12 Coach of the Year is Joey McGuire. And look, I mean, to your point, like Brett Brennan, Willie Fritz are two guys that certainly could be in this conversation.
Yep.
But, I mean, they went out, they earmarked a roster with his buddy James Blanchard. Joey McGuire was able to put together a championship-level roster. You know, we wondered what the expectations were. What did Texas Tech need to do this year to meet expectations? Well, they've done it. The number 4 seed, top 4 seed, heading into the college football playoff. They get a bye, and then they're playing a quarterfinal matchup in the Orange Bowl. They go 12-1, and for the first time ever in program history, win a Big 12 championship. And how about Joey McGuire? When you think about his first 4 years, 8-5, 7-6, 8-5, and now 12-1. What an incredible season for Joey McGuire, the coach of the year in the Big 12, because they didn't just do it because of the talent they had. They did it because the coach brought this group together, galvanized locker room, got them all pulling on the same rope, and that is a difficult thing to do.
Yes, and I think it's a very underrated thing. Everybody thinks, oh, you just have all this talent. Of course you're going to beat people the way that you did. They led the nation in scoring margin. They did things that only 6 college football teams have done ever in the history of the sport in the way they were beating people. And this Big 12 conference, there was a clear gap between Texas Tech and everybody else, and everybody else is still pretty dang good. I think we'll find out in the bowl season just how strong this league is top to bottom.
Big 12 Radio. This is Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo. I'm sure we'll have plenty of other awards to give out for this season as we think through some of the, best acquisitions and other, best GM perhaps. We'll get some other awards for the Big 12 as we move along throughout this week. All right, James Wesley, Gary Tepkin, Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo. We've got basketball to get to, plus we'll get you caught up on the sports weekend with the NCAA volleyball tournament, the Final Four in soccer, and what a huge weekend it was on the hardwood for the Big 12 with Iowa State getting a tremendous win at Purdue. It's historic what Iowa State did, plus Arizona as well. It's all coming up next. It's all coming up. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.